to the Men Show, and I'm your host, Aman Ali, on Ramadan Radio 87 point. Oh, not yet.
Not yet. I didn't say go yet. When I type go kindly, Jazakallah
Sorry,
khair.
I saw live come up, so I thought we were going live. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. You are listening to the Men Show, and I'm your host, Aman Ali, on Radio Ramadan 87.9 FM. Or if you're joining us online, you can go to ramadanradio.org, and we're also streaming on Facebook and YouTube as well. So on today's show, we're going to be speaking about a very important topic that I'm hoping will be relevant to a lot of the listeners joining us today, which is we're going to talk about how we can get our employers. Many of us might be working through Ramadan. Maybe you guys are just on your way home, driving home. And so we're going to talk about how we can get employers to be more flexible and accommodating for Muslims during Ramadan. And joining me on the show, I've got a number of fantastic guests who are joining. One is Neela Khan, who's a researcher at MEND. And later on, we're also going to have guests from the Emerald Network as well, joining us speaking on the topic as well. So to kickstart our discussion, I just want to welcome Neela onto our show today. Neela, like I mentioned earlier, is a researcher at MEND and is the author behind the MEND Guide on Top Tip for Employers. Assalamu alaikum, Neela. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam. I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good. How's your second day of Ramadan going?
Yeah, not bad. So for the first Ramadan, actually, I missed my sahiri, so that was great.
You missed your suhoor?
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
So I had a 24-hour fasting that day instead.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's not something that's not a top tip. Definitely, we want to be sharing on our show today. So Neela, tell me, obviously, MEND at MEND, we've come up with this guide because we've obviously a lot of professionals within the Muslim community. They might be working 9 to 5s outside of Ramadan, and then even in Ramadan, they haven't got the flexibility that we have working in a Muslim organization where they might still have to do 9 to 5s. So we've come up with this guide. So tell us what's inside this guide that we've put together.
So what we did was is take the findings that Muslim Census had carried out. So they carried a survey with working Muslims just to find out what the experiences are like in the month of Ramadan whilst working, like you said, especially for those who are working in a non-Muslim environment. And the findings were quite interesting because, a lot of them did say that, workplaces are supportive. And more importantly, the fact that when workplaces support them, there is actually a greater rate of retention. So they are more likely to stay at the company for 5 years or even longer, whereas those who weren't supported were least likely to stay at the company for a longer period of time. So we can see that there is a correlation between support that Muslim employees receive, especially again in the month of Ramadan, in terms of how long they stay in the company, and obviously the efficiency that they have at work.
So it's really interesting. So if a workplace is accommodating and they might do X number of things, which I think you're going to come on to a bit later, then Muslims have said, and from the Muslim Census Service, that they would stay on with that organization for how many years longer? I mean, how long would they commit for?
It was 5 years or even longer than 5 years. So
yeah, okay. So I mean, so from there, if I'm an employer straight, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm accommodating to my staff, then they're going to stick around longer. They can develop longer. I can train them up more, give them more experience. They can go up the ranks potentially as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Good stuff. And so what else was, I mean, I'm sure there's from this census that was done by the Muslim Census, there's some other fascinating things that came out of that.
Yeah. So I think the other finding that was mentioned, which I think will be mentioned later, is having a Muslim network at workplaces is very important. Again, the findings did show that when there is a Muslim network, what happens is that companies and employees tend to be more accommodating to their employees, whereas when there isn't a network, it can be challenging for Muslims to even have flexibility in the month of Ramadan. So that's another interesting finding. And in terms of flexibility, what was striking to me specifically was the fact that women specifically, they are least likely to ask for accommodation or adjustments because they might fear or they might be shy. So that's another thing that employers need to consider, and I don't think a lot of people think about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, especially, I mean, it's challenging enough in Ramadan, working long hours, and then if you have a commute back home, and then you've got iftar, which is around 8:30, 8 o'clock now. So you haven't got much time after you finish work. So if there's, especially if sisters in particular are not asking for time off, then and potentially they could get that time off if they ask me. I mean, understandably, they might be feeling a bit nervous. You mentioned about the Muslim network, and I think a big change we've seen in the Muslim kind of community scene the last maybe 10, 15 years, or maybe even longer than that, is kind of the increase in Muslim networks. So I know that there's Muslim networks at pretty much all of the big banks and corporate organizations. You've got the Muslim network of BT or Sky or Deloitte or KPMG. And having interacted with individuals who kind of are part of that network, they speak about how, yeah, I mean, the network's amazing. It sorts out our Jummah. Some of us have got halal food in our canteen. It gives us a sense of kind of belonging because we're able to talk to other Muslim colleagues on things which obviously kind of are similar likes that we have or hobbies that we might have as well. So yeah, definitely if Muslim networks are the way, and if you haven't got one set up in your workplace, maybe we'll talk a bit later on with our guests from Emerald about how maybe that can be done. So, okay, so let's kind of dive into the bit of the guide a bit. So I'm a person who works at a given organization, and I'm working 9 to 5s, and ideally I know I'm going Tarawih at night, so I'm probably coming home at midnight, maybe even 1 o'clock, and I'm kind of getting into bed, and then I'm waking up for suhoor again at 3:30, 4 o'clock ish, and suhoor's currently, I think I finish at 4:30 now, praying Fajr, going back to sleep again, and I have to wake up probably at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if I could avoid it, I mean, I don't want to be waking up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Even if you gave me an hour, that would be amazing. So what is it that we can kind of do to try and get some flexibility or kind of accommodation from our employers in regards to Ramadan?
I mean, yeah, so when you put it that way, it does sound quite hectic, doesn't it? So understandably, Muslim employees, they can, there is flexibility that they can ask from their employees. So preferably if employees can reach out to their employers beforehand, or pre-Ramadan, and make some sort of arrangements and discuss what are the alternatives that would work with both as an employee and as an employer, and yeah, find ways to work together. So there is obviously an act that states that after 26 weeks you are actually allowed to seek flexible working hours. So according to that,
that's about 6 months, isn't it? About
yeah,
20, yeah.
Yeah, roughly 6 months. So you should be able to, especially sisters, if you're out there, please do seek accommodations from your employers.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's really, it's not much. If you need any other arrangements like prayer rooms, spreading your breaks across the day, it's usually fine.
Tell me about the break. So, I mean, I remember when I used to work in an office environment, you've got lunchtime, everyone's kind of breaking off at 12:30 or 1, and everyone's gone off either to the canteen or they're going to kind of the local kind of Tesco, grabbing a £2 or £3 meal deal. And then everyone's eating around you. And so, I mean, you haven't got much to do in that hour. Ideally, maybe you could work that hour and then get that hour off at the end of the day. Is that something that, I mean, people can ask for?
I mean, yeah, again, I think it depends on each employer, if you can make up for the hours, and again, if it's stated in the work policy that they do have flexibility, it shouldn't be a problem. It's always best to ask than not to ask, right?
Yeah.
So I think do ask if you can get an hour off, or an hour early. I mean, by making up those hours, then yeah.
But and who I mean, if, for anyone listening out there, and they're wondering, okay, wow, okay, I didn't think about kind of approaching my employer about getting some flexibility in Ramadan. Who should they be approaching? Is it a particular kind of member of team that they should be approaching, or a particular department?
So from what I know, so you are supposed to obviously seek out your, whoever's your line manager at first, and they would ideally guide you to the right person. If by any chance you are not, given that right, you can actually, seek help elsewhere. And sorry, I can't remember what the name is, but you can seek out help, and you can come to us MEND as well, if that's not being accommodated for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening in and thinking, yeah, this is something that I definitely want to kind of do in my workplace. Maybe I can introduce it for this year, even if there's only a few of us, but in the future, maybe other people might join the workforce, our organization that I work for, and they'll benefit from as well. So it can be kind of almost like a charity that's ongoing even after that. So yeah, I mean, if you fall in that category, or if you've got any questions you want to ask us in regards to kind of flexible working arrangements, then do drop us a comment or a question on the Facebook chat. Or if you want to call in, you can call in on 077 614 60614. That's 077 614 60614. So Neela, just kind of going back to kind of the guide that you've created. So we've spoken about kind of flexible hours. We're talking about maybe getting lunch break to count as work hours and shaving that off at the end of the day. Just in general, what kind of other things do we want employers to do beyond just kind of just the flexibility that they might show staff members during Ramadan?
So the other thing we do mention in the guide is, trying to possibly avoid socials or anything that falls during the late hours. Again, like you've mentioned earlier, because we do have to go home, you have to prepare for your meals, just get ready, etc. So ideally avoid anything that falls within those hours. And again, as an employee, I think you will anticipate some what's the word? You will find that your Muslim employees work better throughout the different times of the day. So again, ask them what works better for them. They might start earlier, they might start later, whichever works for them. And lastly, during the last 10 days of Ramadan, you may, again, as employers, find that Muslim employees may seek annual leave. It may be just for the Eid day or the last 10 days. Again, have that conversation with them and see what suits them best, as your employee, and in the best interest.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's really some top tips there. And if anyone wanted to kind of share this guide with their HR department or their line manager, Neela, where can they get access to this kind of guide that they can share with their employees?
So you can find it on our MEND website under the resources section. Literally, if you just click the button, it will come up.
So a bit of self-promotion. What's our website?
Sorry?
What is our website? Just so our viewers know exactly where to go.
All right, Muslim Engagement and Development. Just search on Google and then you click there. And when you look there, you'll find a section that says resources and guidance. Just go there and literally, I think it's the second or third document. You can just find it there. It's also on our social media platforms, so both Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. Many people have been sharing it across LinkedIn, so you might see and just share it again with whoever needs it.
Yeah, I mean, I think sharing it is really important. Even if you are in a situation where, alhamdulillah, you've got a really good employer who is giving you flexibility during Ramadan, has given you time off for Eid. You might even have a situation where they're encouraging even kind of non-Muslim colleagues to kind of get involved and maybe point out a message, making people aware that it's Ramadan and some of your colleagues might be fasting. So if you're working in that kind of environment and you want other colleagues of yours or other friends you might have who work in other organizations and you want them to benefit in the same way, then this guide is a really useful way to start that conversation. I think it's all about just starting that conversation. And one of my mentors always says, if you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, teachers say that all the time. If you don't ask, you don't get. So there's no harm in asking. And you're not asking here for anything kind of particularly special. I mean, it's just, a few aspects of the day that we're looking to kind of accommodate for. So don't feel like you are somehow asking for something untoward or something is somehow wrong for you to ask. I mean, ask away. Like Neela mentioned earlier, if you've been working in an organization for 26 weeks or 6 months, however many weeks that might be, then you are in a position to ask for kind of that, that accommodation. And like the Muslim Census survey said, that for those organizations to accommodate their staff members, then they're likely to stay in that organization for a lot longer. And we know that job security, especially in the COVID world now, I mean, it's tough for a lot of people. A lot of people might have just returned from furlough, and they're coming back to work now in the last few months. And people might have been looking elsewhere. I mean, thinking, okay, this might be a good time for a change. So we want to encourage employers, if there's any employers out there, or if you're in senior management, for example, then help kind of get some of these accommodations involved in your workplace. And that way we can have a situation where Muslims aren't feeling tired, or they're not feeling, they're feeling kind of, it's impacting their spirituality during Ramadan as well. Because I know one of the biggest challenges in Ramadan is working, because it takes out the entire day, it takes a lot of energy out of you as well. So that's kind of really important for us to consider as well. Neela, any kind of final thoughts and comments from you in terms of any messages for our listeners?
I mean, I think the guide is quite comprehensive. Have a look at it, read through it. If you do have questions, again, come to us. And the other thing I wanted to mention, keep sharing, because like you said, you don't know who might need it. Because I myself, I didn't know about this flexibility option that was provided by the Act. So keep sharing and informing everyone.
So that's the employment. I read it on the census myself. It was if I can bring it up, the Employment Rights Act 1996.
Yes.
I mean, we don't want to be kind of encouraging like, okay, you have to do this because of Employment Act 1996, but you can just kind of reference it that, I mean, this is one of the kind of things that are not protected, but recommended for people, for employers to consider when especially when they've shown dedication and commitment for 6 months. And like you said, if you're going to be committing, then how many years again is that people stay in their workplace if they feel like they feel
5 years
for 5 years? Yeah, so that's a long time to be in any organization. So definitely that's something that they should consider. So Neela, what are your kind of plans for tonight in terms of iftar and everything?
Well, I like to be productive, so I already made iftar yesterday, and it's
nice. Okay, pre-planning.
Yeah, continuing today. Do not be wasteful. That's my plan.
Yeah. No, my wife did something. She's a teacher, so she's got containers. This week she's on Easter holiday, so she's relaxing this week. But next week she's got all our iftars planned for the entire month, and they're all containers in the fridge. So yeah, I think as well as sharing top tips for employees, we're sharing top tips for iftar as well.
Yes, make plans. It saves lives.
Save lives.
Yes.
Very much so. Fantastic. So Neela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On our today's show, and we bid you farewell, and thank you for joining us once again. If you want to get access to that guide, you can go to the MEND website, so you can go to mend.org.uk, and on our resources tab there is this top tip for employers guide that you can get access to, and share it with your HR department, share it with the line manager, share it with whoever, and let's get as many people benefiting from this as possible. So Neela, take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So listeners, if you've just joined us now, today we're talking about how we can get our workplace to be more accommodating for Muslim staff members during Ramadan. It's a tough time. It's not a tough time, let's not say that, but it's challenging sometimes balancing fasting and Ramadan, especially because of the kind of like the night prayers that we have, Tarawih in the night, and then we might have to wake up really early in the morning. Or you might be that person who actually doesn't find it too difficult. They might be in really early bird. I've got a few friends who are really early bird people. So even if they've gone to sleep at 2, 3 in the night, they'll wake up 9 o'clock in the morning first thing, or 8 o'clock in the morning, and get on with their day. But they might crash later on in the night during the day when it gets closer to iftar. So our next guests we're going to have on now are from the Emerald Network, and if I can. Alhamdulillah, I've got Rufu and Halima joining us now. So just to give an introduction to the Emerald Network, the Emerald Network is the UK's longest established Muslim professional social network. And joining us today, we've got Rufu Ali and Halima Hussein, who are going to be speaking to us about what good looks like in the workplace in regards to Ramadan. So first of all, welcome to Rufu and Halima. How are you guys doing? How's your Ramadan going so far?
Thanks for having us on.
Alhamdulillah, my pleasure.
Good. Been good.
Good stuff. So, Rufo, how's your Ramadan gone for so far?
Yeah, I'm fine. I think just sleep deprivation, but I think
Yeah,
that's just like a personal issue throughout the whole year, it seems, since the lockdown, as in sleeping patterns. But alhamdulillah, definitely can't complain and got the luxury of being at home. So yeah, absolutely no problem.
alhamdulillah. And Halima, how's your Ramadan been so far?
It's been very good. It's been very good. No
Good.
complaints.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm really happy to have Emerald Network on. I know you guys do some fantastic work in the work of the kind of the professional space. So Rufa, do you want to tell us a bit more about the Emerald Network? Give our listeners a bit of
Sure.
an introduction to the network.
No problem. But yeah, so like I said, thanks for the opportunity. But Emerald established in 2004. Initially, I used to work for a global accountancy firm. And back then, when I was new to London, I was thinking, what forum is there for Muslims to meet and interact and enhance their network outside Ramadan? Because obviously people get together internally in their workplace, which is great, sense of camaraderie. But then outside that, it's almost like nothing until there's sadly a natural disaster and there's a fundraising dinner. But I was thinking, come on, during the year, we must have some kind of forum. So yeah, we just born in 2004. So every single month, alhamdulillah, pretty much without fail for the last 16 plus years, we've hosted an event. And obviously the last year with the pandemic, it's been online.
Fantastic. And Halima, tell us, I mean, you've probably interacted with loads of people throughout the network. What are some of the challenges that employees have during Ramadan and things that they wish could be made a bit more easy for them? Maybe you've got some personal experiences of yourself.
Yeah, I have to say there's a positive spin on this. I think a lot of the time it's about awareness and what is our duty as Muslim is dawah or preaching, etc. So it's an opportunity for us to raise awareness with our employees, etc., our colleagues around us. And when you definitely work for a global organization, you have that day-to-day interaction, you're actually educating, raising awareness. And I'm, from my observation, more and more organizations have a diversity inclusion function, and they are trying their best to accommodate various requirements. And then internally, you've also got, let's say, where I work, we have a Muslim network, and they will also do various activities to raise awareness as well, and at all levels. I've just been part of a video clip, which is about 2 minutes long, gone global within the organization. It's just about personal experiences. I've helped draft comms for our senior leadership team to send out to the employees. And then also we have help or support some of our Muslim colleagues within the organization to approach their line managers and request for some level of flexibility. And I can tell you that there are benefits of working for a global organization. I, at the moment, take my Hong Kong calls 1 a.m. in the morning between my tarawihs and starting my fast. So it keeps me awake and I'm not falling asleep. So there are pros and cons. And I have to say there are a lot more benefits for us overall.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that Hong Kong analogy is quite an interesting one. 1 o'clock at night, and I'm sure a lot of people have got. I was speaking to a colleague earlier. He's working in Denmark. But ours isn't that different. Too different. But yeah, iftar times and things. Sometimes because of the timings, during iftar time, he's had a meeting, so he's eating quietly during the Zoom call, or he's got his camera off and he's carrying on with his work as much as he can. Rufa, any anecdotes from yourself in regards to fasting in Ramadan?
Yeah, I would say in terms of, obviously, I think going back to your previous, guest, obviously, Neela mentioned in terms of, obviously, it's a case of, and Halima's alluded, it's communicating really with the colleagues. It's a case of, yes, for us it's special, and of course we're not going to, downplay Ramadan because mashallah is obviously the blessed month for our perspective, but we shouldn't be seen as almost like making too much of a burden on colleagues and making too much of a statement. So it's a case of obviously doing what we can in terms of being flexible in terms of the hours where we can, obviously. So imagine coming in early, leaving early, or the other way around, for example. Obviously, if it comes to like lunch team meetings and stuff, it's the case of them being sensitive, but again, you're not making too much of a drama out of it, obviously. And then obviously you mentioned like work socials, you're not going to be participating in those, but again, there are other ways around it in terms of, I would say, cooperate with the colleagues and do things pre-Ramadan, post-Ramadan, for example.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted, because Halima mentioned in her workplace where she works, she's got a Muslim network. And I'm conscious that a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with the concept of the Muslim network or the idea of a grouping of Muslims in a given organization. So with Halima, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the idea of a network, and maybe kind of, we're not going to have the time to cover how you can set up a network maybe today, but just kind of the concept behind it and what benefit it brings.
Sure. I have to say the organization I work for has to be like one of the best on the spectrum of supporting their employees. We were one of the very first to have a purpose-built ablution area in the city, so you can imagine, and that's quite a long time ago. In terms of the Muslim network, I obviously when I joined it was already there. My understanding is some group of brothers and sisters have got together, set up a network. Today, what happens, diversity inclusion team would also support. It's ideal to find a sponsor, a senior leadership who would sponsor the network on various initiatives. So we have very senior stakeholders who actually support, let's say, our Ramadan event. They will be on the panel, taking some questions from employees or audience. I've also been part of an interfaith event. On the panel, we have with the UK senior leadership team members, and it's working with leadership team to help raise awareness so the information and the comms actually filters down to a grassroots level. But it does take a lot of effort to get there. So if you're in the concept phase, it will require effort, some groundwork, working collaboratively. And it does add a lot of benefits. So this year, we've partnership with a very large charity in terms of raising money, and eventually the funds will go to them. And the organization will match that fund, what we collect initially, which is like a double benefit ultimately.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I was going to interject actually. Halima's, mashallah, really blessed to be able to work for like a global, firm which has an amazing network. And from the experience of Emerald, we've seen a nice spectrum of other employee networks, and obviously from cross sectors. So some that which are obviously profession specific. So for example, medics only, or the lawyers or the teachers, which is great. And others are actually organization specific. But I think the main thing is, as Halima alluded to, it's having almost like the structure from top down. So at least, no matter when you join, whether it's a graduate trainee or if you join as senior management or director level, you feel as though it's that sense of belonging. So culturally, from an organization point of view, to know that, yes, you believe in the values of that organization, but more so you can, I know it's a cliche, you can bring your whole self to work because you are, as a Muslim, with a label, prefix, suffix, whatever you like, basically. But the main thing is you're not having to say, oh no, I can't practice my faith at workplace, or there's obstacles or there's tension. If it's an organization that embraces it, and one way is by allowing networks to, foster and grow, then it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I kind of think back when I went to college and you had the Islamic Society at college, and when you went to university, especially, even as adults, you feel like if you're in a new environment, you might feel a bit lonely, or you might feel a bit out of place in the beginning. And just having somewhere where you can just go to, okay, oh, there's a Muslim network there. I identify with that. Let me get to know some people who may not work in different departments and different teams, and just not feel like you're the only Muslim. A sense of belonging, exactly, yeah. And like Rufa mentioned, bring your full self to work. I think a lot of organizations are really pushing that. I definitely remember when I first joined, when I used to be a teacher a couple of years ago now, and I joined and I got my timetable, and I started interacting with the children. But when I went to staff room, I felt really out of place, and like it can be quite, I wouldn't say use the word traumatic, that's a bit too strong of a word, but it can be a bit of a lonely period. And then you get to know people. But if you have a network, then that's even better. And we had a policy in the place I used to work in, because alhamdulillah, there were quite a few Muslim teachers there as well. And when Hajj would come around, because usually teachers are only able to have time off when it's holidays. So it's the holidays, you got time off, you go have your holidays then, but it's term time, you have to be in school. And so they had a policy where they would allow one member of staff to go on Hajj a year, which was, I think, a good policy, because obviously if it's term time, teachers are not expected to take time off. But because there was lots of employers who were there working together, they had like a rotation system whereby, okay, you've been around, we'll let one or two of you go to Hajj, even though it's term time. But beyond that, from Emerald's kind of experience, you've got years of experience in this area. What does good look like? What should be the norm in terms of kind of the working environment for Muslims in the workplace?
Yeah, sure. I would say what I've done is actually while we're waiting offline, I've almost come up with a bit of an acronym actually. So it's almost based on, ironically, some of the findings of the reports. But the first thing is good would, comprise of I'll say the following four things. One is flexibility. So flexibility in terms of time. So obviously you can abbreviate as flexi time, for example, but, to be able to communicate and for them as, your management to be able to accommodate people's requests to obviously change your time schedule if needs be. So obviously we're not saying you must always obviously change your hours, but if it means it helps and an organization is obviously accommodating, then that is what good looks like. Yeah, they're able to accommodate flexi time. Next one is obviously accommodating work from home, for example. And previously we would have thought that obviously certain industries or certain sectors would say, no, we must come in, you must come in. Goodbye to commutes. End of the day, that takes a lot of people, saves a lot of time, should I say. It takes a lot of people out in terms of the fatigue, for example. So if you're able to, even if you don't traditionally throughout the year, if things go back to so-called normal, come fast forward to Ramadan next year, think about whether you can actually do 3-4 days at work from home if possible, or if not, something to ease the burden. So accommodate working from home is the next thing. And the last 2 points is in terms of salah, so prayer provisions, obviously depending on the time, obviously as the calendar moves towards spring and then into March and then February, more than likely you might be obviously praying during working hours, so to speak. So again, facilities, the dream situation is like Halima mentioned, there are employers having, fantastic wudu facilities and dedicated prayer rooms. If you haven't, because I worked for a firm where they said you can use the first aid room. It wasn't the best, but if it means booking out meeting rooms, then at least you know that you can book out dedicated meeting rooms, but it's the onus is on yourself. You can't expect every organization to spend and invest on facilities. But obviously what good looks like is, yes, they've got a dedicated prayer space. And the last thing is obviously time off. So it's a case of, again, whether it's a case of taking off the last 10 nights or generally taking time off, is a good employer will be accommodating. Obviously it takes two to communicate that well in advance, so don't surprise them with like 2 weeks ago. You've had all 11 months of the year to obviously communicate that. So all of that summarizing, I would say flexi time, basically accommodating working from home, salah facilities obviously, and then time off, which as an acronym, easy to remember, it spells fast. So there we go.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for it. When is the punchline coming through?
There's a branding punchline, yeah, fast.
So let me see if I can remember that. So flexi time, accommodating, S, what does the S stand for? Salah, and then T is for time off.
Time off, yeah.
Very, very topical and very in this Ramadan spirit, mashallah. Halima, did you want to add anything on in terms of what good looks like from you?
I think Rufus echoed everything that I would have said. No, I think pretty much he's covered it all. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
Yeah, I would say to on Halima's point, actually, as in, she's been lucky to that tone from the top. So from a CEO to be engaged, I would say what good looks like is when you have actually, and it's not lip service, it is sincere, authentic, acknowledgement from the top. So, today I've been on LinkedIn and I've noticed so many corporates, from the BMWs through to your big four accounting firms have got the Ramadan Kareem messages, which is brilliant. And it sends a brilliant signal, from a cultural point of view and a sense of belonging point of view, and externally facing from a consumer point of view. They thought, wow, these guys are acknowledging, and it's come straight from the top as opposed to just a generic meme or a graphic.
Yeah, I mean, so in your view, what do you think that does when an organization does recognize Ramadan or Eid and they put out a message, just Ramadan Kareem? It seemed like a small gesture, but do you think it must have a huge impact in terms of not just people who work in that organization, but also people who might be potentially looking to work in that organization as well?
You feel supported and empowered, and you want to be part of an organization where they are welcoming. That's where I'm at the moment. I find that massively welcoming, where I'm giving that flexibility and opportunity. Of course, you might find individuals somewhere where, for whatever reason, process-wise, how it's set up, they may not be able to allow you that flexibility. But if you have that conversation in advance, you can make it happen.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just the day before Ramadan you go in and say, I need more time. We know what our calendar dates are, more or less. Let's plan it at the beginning of the year. Just go in and say, this is where I'm looking to take time off. You're planning to take all your Fridays off. Go in advance and do that. And that actually makes it easier for your line managers and the employers.
Sure. And externally, I think it's a case of definitely when people, say from graduate perspective, if you're looking, or it could be actually in theory, any level, if you're looking for your next move, and I would say if you're faced with a dilemma of 50-50 of a short list of 2 organizations to work for, I can tell you now, almost unbiased, but it's the case of if an organization is culturally diverse, if it portrays a really welcoming message, and simply from literature through to the websites, through to the social media, it just shows they're all encompassing and all inclusive in that sense. You'll probably be swayed towards them. It really would be like a warmer, more hospitable culture compared to another one which could be clinical but excellent in what they do. But you're just thinking it is a dilemma. But then going back to the point about Muslim networks, if there is someone through the power of word of mouth, who works for that organization, that's the power of networking, finds out in ear to the ground of what it's really like in that sense. So it's equivalent to like a review of an organization without it being formal.
Yeah, no, amazing. I mean, so a lot of people are going to be working throughout the day, and after a long day's struggle at work, they're going to want to kind of spend some time kind of focusing on Quran or spirituality, or just having some time to themselves in order to reconnect with Allah as much as they can in Ramadan. And I know that Emerald does some fantastic work throughout Ramadan as well to help professionals make the most out of Ramadan. So you guys want to tell me about what you guys have got planned for this Ramadan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, historically, and Halima can vouch for this, we've had like an annual fundraiser in terms of iftar. So it's a really nice event, like examples of iftar on the Thames, iftar at the Gherkin, iftar at the Shard. They've been almost like flagship events, something to look forward to after a long day. You've got an iconic event. But last year, obviously, made us go online, and we collaborated with a number of organizations, one being NAS Legacy Foundation. So delighted to say, as announced of yesterday, so if you go to naslegacy.org, so it's NAZ and NAZ, legacy.org. We've announced the calendar of events that we'll be collaborating with. So it's 2 events per week starting next week. So we've got 6 events coming up. So effectively virtual iftars, where we've got special guests and special themes. So ranging from the world of sports, world of politics, literally we've got an all-female event as well. In that sense, we've got a showcase of the best. So you can see we've got different themes, and it's obviously spiritual guidance, spiritual reflection, plus a worldly look on, almost like what we're saying, like what Ramadan looks like in the workplace. So yeah, so tune in to those ones. And then obviously on our social media, all the channels, Emerald Network, we've got people sharing ranging from du'as, recipes, well-being, nutrition, name it, as well as individuals who've got special offers on their businesses or their fundraising.
Amazing. Sounds amazing. Seems like there's. So do I have to bring my own food to the iftar? I'm guessing.
Yeah, you've got to bring your own food.
Like
Don't
delivery.
worry.
Am I going to get a knock on the door?
You can keep your camera off. We don't want to see your biryani. Don't worry.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've also noticed some Q&A stuff that you guys are doing as well. I don't know if Sheikh Salim Al-Azhari, I think, or
yep, that's it. Yeah, so basically every single month, again since last year, we've made it the final week of every single month. So it's on like a Tuesday, and we play on a certain social media title, but we call it Faith Book. So it's really connecting with the Quran. So really, really nice. As in, again, 30 minutes, very much bite-sized, and it's a case of quick reflection, quick connection. Like you mentioned, obviously everyone's busy in their own rights, but we think the inverted commas Muslim professional, with all the demands they have, I just think it's a case of, irrespective of your paper title, we're ultimately Muslim, and we ultimately need to pray more, do more, inshallah, get the balance of good deeds strengthened, and then connecting with the Quran's one way. And we're honored to have Sheikh Salim obviously give up his time to take on the Q&A and give pointers, really.
Yeah. Any top tips for me for Ramadan?
I would just say focus on your well-being, spirituality.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think often sometimes we get, I think sometimes, I wouldn't say a trap, but sometimes we might get, okay, I need to do this much, I need to read this much Quran, or I need to do this many things, and you almost stress yourself out by trying to be so productive, and you actually lose the meaning or kind of the spiritual connection that you need to make during this Ramadan. I think one khutbah that was recently I went to was, I expected, they said, okay, the most important thing during Ramadan, and I thought the next thing was going to be the Quran. But then the Khatib said, no, the most important thing for you during this month is to get the forgiveness of Allah. And how, and he reminded us of the hadith of Prophet when he went up the minbar, and he said, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. And one of the reasons he said Ameen was, I think wretched is the person who, when Ramadan comes, they don't get the forgiveness of Allah. And so he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Jibreel Islam made that dua, he said Ameen. So I think, yeah, I mean, have that spiritual connection and is so crucially important during Ramadan. Rufo, any top tips from yourself for Ramadan? Any advice you want to give to listeners?
Yeah, almost to echo what Halima mentioned, that self-care, the notion of self-care, and echoing what you've said, really, I think it's a case of it comes around so quickly, and everyone keeps saying, oh, I can't believe it's come around again this quickly. But then that just shows the notion of time. And I think it's a case of we live in times where everything's fast moving, everything's on our fingertips, and the expectations are just you should be able to work faster, work more, do this and do that, and balance family, home, personal lives, and what have you. But I think when it comes to yourself and the connection with our Creator, it is literally between yourself. At the end of the day, no matter who you work for, what your paper title is, we're going to obviously be accountable, not for that aspect. So it's just, how we spend our time, the knowledge we've acquired, how we use the knowledge, the income that we've obviously earned, and how we spend it, in terms of halal perspective point of view. But then I think your health, the pandemic has shown us obviously that we just take for granted. And then in terms of the youth and obviously turning older every year sort of thing, that you've got to be able to say then that accountability, a sense of accountability to use your time wisely. I would say that's one thing we shouldn't underestimate. So I would say, if anything, it's just like self-reflect, definitely reflect spiritually, mentally, physically, but then look at how you spend your time, and going forward, how you intend to spend your time. So less is more, quality over quantity, in terms of all aspects, to get a balanced lifestyle.
Yeah, fantastic. I think another thing which is interesting is the number of young people who are coming out of university and joining kind of professional networks or getting kind of jobs in various sectors. I think when you look at the population of the Muslim community, I think in the recent census, obviously we've just done the census now and we're waiting for the results from that, but I think 50% of Muslims are under the age of 25. I think even a third of that is below the age of 16. So we're going to have a whole host of young people who are going to go through the education system in the UK, get amazing results at the best universities, and they're going to be looking to join kind of the top firms in the UK as well. And I think, is there a message there in terms of, as employers, going back to what we're talking about today, is how employers can be more flexible, is that it's actually in the interest of the employers to be flexible and accommodating. What would your message be in regard to that?
Yeah. Halima, do you want to go first?
Well, I think you would attract talent, and you can get the best, because obviously more and more people will be interested. You will also be able to retain talent longer, because if people like the workplace, they'd want to stay. Where I'm at the moment, it's coming up to my 10 years, and I thought I was only going to do 2 years. So if you actually join an employer who meets your requirements, I think you're just going to spend more time with them and grow with them. And you can also support whatever initiatives that your Muslim network have on the ground as well, and help the next generation, which is what I'm trying to do at the moment, support the next generation coming up the ladder, trying to be a role model as much as I can. So that's what I would say would be the case.
Yeah, sure. And all I'll add to is twofold, really. One is from prospective employees' point of view, i.e. the future graduate, what have you. Don't underestimate the importance and value of networking. So really, really don't see it as like that's just too corporate, too clinical, because I know it's a horrible phrase. It's not what you know, but who you know. We don't want it to be seen as that, but it's obviously on meritocracy. But really, really do nourish your connections and networks. So start early if it means using social media to connect to people. And then from an employer's point of view, to make themselves more attractive, as I said, have a wholesome culture, one that is global, outward looking, and feel as though everyone's then included in that sense. So to be attractive, be something as an organization that you have your corporate values, but your corporate values do not, be out of sync with an individual from diverse backgrounds in that sense.
Yeah, I think especially in light of the fact that I'm seeing, especially throughout the work of MEND, that as a community, we're becoming more confident in our faith. I think it's been a positive trend in that regard. And Halima mentioned a lot early on in the program how Ramadan and just kind of having more Muslims working in those top firms or in the NHS or working as teachers and whatnot. It's an opportunity for us to really kind of amplify rather the positive contributions that we make in the UK. I mean, we know that I think 15% of the NHS is made from Muslim staff members, and we only make up 5% of the population. And the number of I think I can't remember the stat now, but the number of graduates coming out of the university, I think 50% of the workforce in the next 10 years is going to come from the Muslim community in the UK. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, like, okay, so let me get my head around that. 50% of the new people coming into the workplace are going to be Muslim. That's huge. And that in itself holds huge potential for the Muslim community. And I think if there's been one lacking or one area where we still need to improve in, is seeing more Muslims in senior leadership and senior management. And Rufo, you mentioned how networking is so important for that as well. Sure. Halima, from your experience in terms of, I mean, you've been in the organization for 10 years. Any other kind of top tips for young kind of budding people joining workplaces, how they can really get up the ladder and really prosper in their organization?
Echoing to Ruka's point, networking and find a mentor. It doesn't have to be within your workplace. It could be someone external who's got some experience, and it's actually finding a mentor who can help you along that journey. And you don't necessarily need to have one for your entire career. You can have it certain phases, and you can have more than one as well. So I would ideally say networking and finding a mentor who can guide you.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'll add also in terms of inspiration, we recently did a publication, easy to remember, Emerald 100, so literally the number 100.com, and that lists 100 that people have come through our network over the last, so many years. Now celebrating our 15th anniversary, but that is almost like an A to Z of profession. So where once upon a time, you think doctors, dentists, accountants, lawyers were the dominant thing, but we have people in the creative industry, the tech environment, or, not-for-profit sector, name it. Mashallah, we've got an amazing array of talents. And then for the next generation, it should be a case of, getting inspiration from people from different backgrounds, and just don't think I can't do that. Everything's possible, inshallah, with, as I said, networking and mentoring.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a resource I recommend our listeners to search up, Emerald 100. I'm fortunate, I've got a copy of the book in my shelf, and I had to flip through it, and it's amazing. It's really inspiring to see, kind of like you mentioned, that transition we've seen in our community from doctors, accountants, and what's the other one?
Lawyers, I said.
Lawyers, that's the third one, isn't
dentists,
it? It's usually, and not to say that I mean, they're amazing careers, but what we've seen is the shift in that we're seeing a lot more creatives within our community. We've seen a lot more people take up positions in public office. I mean, we've got Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London. You don't get a better example of that, of a Muslim figure in a prominent position, but we've got loads of MPs as well. You've got young members of parliament as well. And I think I'm really feeling positive about the future. I mean, obviously, MEND, we work in the work of tackling Islamophobia, but I mean, a big part of that is to actually change the narrative around the Muslim community and showcasing how we're positively contributing to society is a big part of that, in our view, towards kind of eradicating the problem of Islamophobia that we see in the UK. And the work that Emerald does in connecting people from various backgrounds in professional networks to come together. And I've been to some of your events as well. I mean, before COVID, some of the events you guys put on were really, mashallah, quite fun and quite interactive as well. I went to a quiz once. I didn't win, and it was a really tough quiz. I don't know where you got those questions from, Rufo, but it completely caught me off guard.
Get revising for this year.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, definitely. So, I mean, in terms of Emerald calendar this year, anything that our viewers our listeners rather, should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, recap, the Ramadan calendar will be online. So as I said, it will be on Emerald Network social media. So you can look up Emerald Network, or you can go to naslegacy.org, and that lists the Ramadan calendar that we'll be supporting, collaborating on. And after Ramadan, inshallah, we want to return in person when safe to do so. It won't be large scale events. We'll start small relatively, but inshallah, every single month without fail, was like, inshallah, obviously, from May through to December, we'll be hosting. So look out for the second Eid, so not immediately after Ramadan, but Eid al-Adha we will do end of July, something spectacular. So watch this space. I can't give too much away, but the final week of July, you need to schedule in your calendar. And then after that, subject to travel restrictions, we might consider in the autumn trips abroad, because we did do Emerald
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, Emerald trips.
I'm dying to go abroad. I'm stuck in the UK.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Emerald trips in the past, we've covered Bosnia, we've done Turkey, we've done Uzbekistan, Jordan, Jerusalem. That's all in association with IslamicTravels.com. And inshallah, potentially September, October, even if it's a short weekend, Andalusia or maybe Sarajevo, they're the two shortlists that we're looking at the moment. And then other ones will be just in UK, so photo walks, so walks in Manchester, London, so photo walks, call it like a wellbeing walk and talk, and learn using your camera on your phone, smartphone photography. So that's tips masterclass from myself. And then everything else, like the quiz night we do every year historically in November, inshallah, that will return as well. So plenty coming up basically, but the main thing is look out on our social media.
Alhamdulillah. No, thank you both for joining us, and Jazakallah for all your tips and experiences that you shared with us. Listeners, I hope you guys benefit from the top tips from our guests from the Emerald Network. Do make sure to check out their work and get involved with the various offerings that they have, not just in Ramadan, but outside of Ramadan as well. And like Halima mentioned and Rufo mentioned, we're seeing those key kind of tips in terms of networking and finding a mentor, really important, I think, valuable pieces of advice as well. So just to kind of wrap up and kind of bring to a summary what we've covered today, we spoke about how as Muslims during Ramadan, one of the ways that we can try and really make the most of Ramadan is trying to get our employers to be more flexible and accommodating throughout Ramadan. And we had our guest Neela Khan, who spoke about the MEND top tips guides for your employers. So it's a resource that you can access by visiting www.mend.org.uk and looking at the resources section of the website. And basically there's a guide there where you can share with your HR departments or your line manager or whoever's senior within the organization in a bid to try and get them to be a bit more flexible during Ramadan. Things like having flexible hours, working from home. Rufo came up with a fantastic anagram, fast, so flexible
fast
time. I've forgotten again.
That's all right. So flexible in terms of time, accommodating like working from home, salah, prayer facilities, and then time off, communicate well in advance with taking time off.
Yeah, so they're all the things that, I mean, I'm sure all of us, it'll be music to our ears, or nasheeds to our ears maybe, if in regards to Ramadan. And yeah, just getting lunch times, kind of having that as working hours and making employees aware that maybe you might not be attending the socials in the evening because it's iftar time. But we also discussed how there's so many organizations out there which are recognizing Ramadan and recognizing kind of the contributions of Muslim networks that exist as well. And the Emerald team spoke to us about what good looks like and how setting up a network in your workplace is so important to ensure that you feel a sense of belonging and that you're able to bring your full self to the workplace. So if any of that has been something which has been interesting to you, and if you just joined us towards the end now, this has been the MEND Show. And next week, we're going to be back again, speaking about another topical issue that we hope will be of benefit to you. And until then, I've been your host, Aman Ali, and a big thanks to my guests, Rufo and Halima, for joining me today as well, and Neela earlier on as well. And until next week, so I'll be back next week as well, from 6 o'clock to 7 p.m. On 87.9 FM Ramadan Radio. And if you're not listening on the radio, you can join us on Facebook and YouTube as well. And I hope to see you next week. So without further ado, hope you guys have a fantastic iftar, and I'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.